Hello and welcome back to Burning Questions. My name is Mbali, and today I have two amazing guests, Nicholas Larima and Marius Root. Guys, thank you so much for taking your time to join me on your favorite podcast. I deem this your favorite podcast, okay? After the Daily Friend, of course.
That's
Pleasure
fine.
to be here.
Guys, so today we have a question from one of our people on Instagram. And the question reads: will the decline of the RET ANC lead to a very significant improvement in South Africa? First of all, Nicholas, what is RET?
Right. So you've probably, if you listen to the news even a little bit, you've probably heard this term before,
Yeah.
RET faction.
Mhm.
So basically, what it means is RET stands for Radical Economic Transformation. And it's a group of
Mhm.
people in the ANC who use this term to describe themselves, and they present themselves as a sort of authentic voice of the real ANC, right? They say that they're the ones who are
Okay.
truly committed to the ANC's revolutionary program. And the RET faction is associated with people like suspended Secretary General of the ANC, Ace Magashule,
Mhm.
Jacob Zuma, um, uh, Supra from Northwest, people like that, right?
Mhm.
And they've traditionally been portrayed in the media as kind of like the guys who are far more committed to these sort of revolutionary policies, right? The printing more money, the taking stuff, all of those kind
Mhm.
of ideas that the ANC is pushing.
Okay.
So that's really that. In a nutshell, that's really what the RET faction is. We can get into whether the name that they've given themselves, which is of course radical economic transformation, um,
Mhm.
is truly appropriate.
Um, well, okay. Let me hear from you, Marius. What are your thoughts on this question that we got? I think let's just go straight into answering it.
Yeah, well, I think what we must remember is actually there's no real political or policy difference between the RET faction and the broader ANC, like if you want to call it Cyril
Mhm.
Ramaphosa's ANC. Remember, lots of these policies, which are radically economically transformative, if you want to call it that,
Mhm.
such as expropriation without compensation, the national health insurance, um, lots of there's been lots of talk of increasing taxes. This has all come under Cyril Ramaphosa's presidency.
Mhm.
EWC under Jacob Zuma was always bubbling in the background, but was never pushed very hard. It was
Yeah.
only when Jacob Zuma saw that he needed to do something to kind of increase his popularity that he decided, okay, let's push EWC, let's push free university for people and so on. So it was never really part of Jacob Zuma's, policy. I mean, but it's also an open question whether Jacob Zuma really had any policies that he thought about. So there's no real difference between the ANC RET and the rest of the ANC, to be honest. And
Mm.
Cyril Ramaphosa, I think, generally agrees with quite a lot of what the RET says. I think the only real difference is that the RET faction is they're pretty open about that. They just, want to pretty much loot and eat at the trough and so on. Where the rest of the ANC tries to be slightly, a bit more circumspect about how
More
much they're going
subtle.
to, yeah, a bit more subtle about how much they're going to eat. So,
Yeah.
you know, uh, the issue is we can get rid of people like Ace Magashule and Jacob Zuma, and the ANC can banish them to wherever, and they can never be part of the ANC again. But the
Mhm.
issues South Africa faces will still be the ANC itself is pushing very bad policies that are making everybody poorer. We just saw the latest unemployment figures. Of course, they've been
Mhm.
influenced by things such as the COVID-19 pandemic and so on. But it is
Mhm.
the highest unemployment rate we've seen since the quarterly labor force survey started. And remember,
Mm.
and Cyril Ramaphosa has been president for 3 years now. There's we
Truth.
can't say that it's all Jacob Zuma's fault, and poor Cyril
Mm.
Ramaphosa's hands are tied.
Mm.
We got to say at some point, look, the guy, he's the president of South Africa. He's the most powerful man in the country. He's also got some agency. So, we can. It's not an issue of the decline of the RET faction won't really make much of a difference. If South
Mm.
Africa needs change, we need actually decline of the ANC as a whole.
Mm. Mm.
Yeah, I
Definitely.
agree. I
Definitely.
agree
Yeah.
completely with Marius there. What people make the mistake of thinking is that when the RET faction says no, no, we're for radical economic transformation,
Mm-hmm.
they don't realize that in a lot of ways that's sort of a branding exercise, and that it's not like the other side doesn't also believe in radical economic transformation.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
just the RET faction says no, no, we believe in it even harder.
Mm.
It's
And
like, no, we believe in it more than you do. Okay.
exactly.
Right.
And look, I mean, the fact is, most people in South Africa, I mean, we are pro radical economic transformation, but obviously
Mm,
the way we conceive of it is very different from the people in the RET faction. We think there should be,
yeah.
the labor market regulation should be loosened. We think things like we should get rid of things like BE. We need to look at state this intervention of the government in the states and the markets and so on. We should get rid of things like or most of the SOEs, the state-owned enterprises. So we are also pro radical economic transformation, but we
Yeah.
obviously just have a very different view of what that means. And obviously, I think the RET faction and the ANC in general, they also pro RET, but a very different kind of RET than the one we envisage.
Yeah, definitely. Mr. Larimer, do you have anything to add before we get to the quote of the day?
No, not really. I think Morris has covered it really well.
Okay, cool. Let us get into quote of the day. So today's quote is from F.A.H. That's how I'm going to say it. So it reads, if socialists understood economics, they wouldn't be socialists. And I think this kind of, well, it does tie into what we're speaking about. Don't know what you guys have to say about it. If socialists understood economics, they wouldn't be socialists.
I think part of that is because socialism is in a lot of ways, if you look at its history, right, it actually
Mhm.
takes on board a lot of economic theories that were considered correct when socialism was created as a sort of organized way of looking at the world in the 1850s. And since then, economists and the economic field have moved on quite a lot. But
Mm,
socialism it's got this dimension of being so much more than just socialists often, especially old hardcore Marxists of the sort of kind that you don't find that many of anymore, but there's still quite a few of them running around, especially in the ANC. Um,
mhm,
they kind of like to think of themselves as being like very scientific people who are just looking at the world in a very hard nosed, careful way.
mm,
But really, socialism isn't about economics. It's about this vision of a future liberated from work, from oppression, from things like that. And so, in a lot of ways, it's far more kind of like a religion without a deity than it is an economic or political system. Of
mm.
course, it also is far more focused on the politics of a lot of things than on the economics of certain things. In fact, it thinks those two things are intertwined far more, I think, than we'd agree with.
Yeah.
I think there is a lot of truth in that quote there, which is that socialists, despite what they may say, tend to not actually be really that interested in economics.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. Marius, please add your 2 cents.
Yeah, I think Nick was spot on there. And I
Hmm.
mean, you just have to look at historical the historical record. Capitalism has its faults. I mean, we can definitely agree with that, but it has lifted more people out of poverty and enabled more people to reach their potential than any socialist country. I mean, and you can just look. We have some real world experiments. We can look at West Germany versus East Germany. We can look
Hmm.
at to a degree North Korea versus South Korea. Countries
Yeah,
where they allow the free market and people to trade freely and so on are always richer and always let humans reach their potential more than places where these kinds of things are restricted. I mean, and you also don't see people from Florida getting onto rickety boats trying to get to Cuba. It's always the other way around. So
yeah.
that tells you something. People vote with their feet. And throughout history, people have voted to leave socialist countries to go to capitalist countries.
Yeah, definitely, guys. I think we have unpacked and answered this question very well. Thank you so much again for taking your time to come help me answer this burning question. And you at home, I hope that you send through any questions that you have on Twitter, Instagram, and on Facebook. We'll catch you guys next week, Wednesday at 6 o'clock. Bye.